Hey, this is my Impending Doom League starter for the 3.25 Legacy of Phrecia event. I am the Harbinger Ascendancy class. If you are not playing during this event, this can still work. I can talk about that later. But yeah, I wanted to make this video because I think I'm doing things a little bit differently than other people who are playing Impending Doom, and it's not like there's a lot of Impending Doom discussions or videos out there. I'll start just with a quick sort of stats on what the video is. I'll pull up the POB, or on what the build is. So we've got 2.7 million DPS here. This is what the tree looks like. We've got Fizz max hit of 14k, LE max hit of 35k, Chaos max of 13k. We are leeching Life EDS. We've got some instant leech. We have a pretty significant hybrid pool. By significant, I just mean that we are actually using our hybrid pool. Our damage is split between this pool because of the Harbinger Ascendancy. Again, if you weren't using the Harbinger, you could use a Glorious Vanity with, I think it's Doriani, the Corrupted Soul, and you could put that right here. You would take Mind Over Matter. You wouldn't take these 3 life nodes, you'd put them somewhere else. And that would also split your damage between life and ES and give you max ES based on your life. So it's going to do the exact same thing. I'm not using a Timeless Jewel here anyway at the moment, so it's not like I'd have to trade something off to do that. But back to, I guess I'll just open a map now. This is a Promenade. It's a tier 16. We're cursed with Enfeeble, so we'll do a little bit less damage, and we can't modify enemies' action speed, which is too bad because we have a temp chain Zara, but whatever. It's not the most, every map's gonna have something bad for you. This one's not that bad. I'll pick this guy up. I'll pick that guy up. He'll empower some enemies for us. But as you can see, a huge curse AoE, which is really deceptive because the curses cover like 2 screens almost, like 1.5 at least. They're very, very large. But that is not the AoE of our clear. There are shrines in this map. I'm just not gonna click on the shrines, obviously. The AoE of our clear is based on the actual Doom Blast. So as I'm killing things, you're gonna see red explosions on anything that's like caught in my cursed area. I will show you here. I'll clear this area. I will show you a Legion because this build is not very good at Legion. Actually, I don't remember if I mentioned this. This build's just not very good. It's like fine. I did 2 Watchstones. I killed my Maven, so 3 Watchstones. Voidstones, what are they called these days? So you'll notice it is hard. Like, I want to kill this fossil here. I can't actually pick to target it. I want to kill this guy. I guess there's not too much other stuff being caught there. You don't get to pick. You don't get to pick what blows up. See how I was targeting this up here, but you were seeing red explosions on the south side there? You don't get to pick what you target. Impending Doom is 3 charges and a cooldown. And any time that I cast Despair, it's going to pick any 3 people and explode them. It's not going to explode everybody caught in my Despair. So it doesn't really... I was going to say it doesn't matter how big the AoE of my Despair is, but it actually matters a lot. And I'll get into that. It matters for how your overlaps, or how many overlaps you have on a single target. So your AoE matters, but it's not like it scales your clear super hard. It actually scales your single target. I do have a bunch of AoE just for the Doom Blast itself, not just for my hexes, but for the Doom Blast itself, to make the overlaps a little bit better. You can see there, it's not the worst, and it's a very one-button build. I've got a Frost Blink, which I cast, and that is it, aside from Despair, right? I cast the 1 curse I have. I have a cast 1 damage taken Assassin's Mark, which is actually only... this is a level 1 cast 1 damage taken, and going from a level 8 Assassin's Mark, which is what you can support, up to like a level 20, it's only like 5% more damage. So I do have the ability to cast 1, but I rarely do. It's just like, I'm fine with just automating it at the loss of 5% damage. I've got an automated... Immortal Call as well. Not like I have endurance charges, but I do have a bit of cooldown recovery rate, so that Enduring Cry, or Immortal Call, I'm sorry. Did I not kill everybody here? That Immortal Call has about a 45, I think, % uptime. I'm gonna leave the map here. I think you guys have kind of seen what it does. The only thing I'll show is that the Blasphemy range, you can see that it's basically the whole screen. Like as this guy comes into the screen, they gain it. So Blasphemy is pretty large. I think it's like a 6.4 meter radius, if I recall. At the bottom of the screen they have it. I think in the corners they won't quite have it, or at the very edge they won't. But effectively, it's always going to be up here. I'm going to hop out of this map now. So to talk a little bit about the build, I am a crit build. Most people playing Impending Doom are playing it poison. I think that's fine. I think that there are a lot of downsides to playing poison. I think that the DPS is a little bit faker, just because it takes time to ramp up. If your poison duration is 6 seconds and you've got a 6 million DPS, well, you're not hitting 6 million until those 6 seconds. But regardless, I'm crit. I'm also not power charge stacking because this is a league starter build and I'm working on a league start budget. This whole build is less than 5 divines. And, if you see people power charge stacking, they're using Ralakesh boots with this build. Those are 20 to 30 divines. I'm not getting that, especially when I'm starting something that's not super strong. I'm not getting that in the first weekend. So if we talk a little bit about, maybe we'll go item by item. So first, Crown of the Inward Eye, not a necessary item, but it's quite good. We're scaling a good bit of life and energy shield. A fine amount. Getting damage off those is good. It's very defensive. You can go with a rare helm here. You could go instead with a Doedri Scorn as well. We have 4 curses. That's going to be like 10% more damage over the crown. I think the crown is, though, a good in-between on something tanky and damage. A rare, it's going to be hard to get as much damage as the crown is going to give you, actually. If we look at chest, Cloak of Flame, this is to increase our physical mitigation because we don't really have much to speak of otherwise for that. You could go a Doppelganger's Guise. It's actually better. It's better physical mitigation and better chaos mitigation. But I actually need the resistances. My build is not good enough at the moment. My gear isn't good enough. I am just barely over cap. And part of that is that I've chosen to put a good bit of resistances into chaos res. So I'm at 37 chaos res. I'm also splitting my chaos damage taken between life and energy shield with this energy shield mastery. So chaos damage is not super brutal for this build. I think I forgot to mention, I've got block. If we look at the POB here, my block is 4658. The only conditional here is have you crit recently, because there's a staff node here, or no, it was this first one. This one, 5% chance to block if you've dealt a crit recently, which we have. So we've got a 4658 block, which is good. We also have recover 2% of energy shield when we block and 2% of life when we block. So anytime we block, we're recovering something, which is nice because we're going to jump into a pack of eater enemies and they're going to have a bunch of projectiles and they're going to hit us and we're going to block and it'll recover something. Whether it's an attack or a spell, we're not just losing stuff, which is good. Cane of Kulamak. This is, first of all, this without the 6, it's like 40 chaos or less, and a worse version that's like very similar is probably 10 or 15. This is not a very expensive item, and it's very, very good. Impending Doom doesn't scale with spell levels. If you have a staff that says +3 to level of all chaos spell skill gems, it doesn't work because it's not a skill gem. It is a spell, but it's not a skill gem. It's a support gem. So the only way to increase the level is with something like Cane of Kulamak. You could also have the actual crafted mod, right? You could go to a crafting bench and add on the +2 to supports. However, man, Cane is just pretty good. So an extra +1 is very good. I was looking at POB and trying to come up with a better staff. You'd need a really, really good staff to beat this. 26% chance to deal double damage is 26% more damage. The +3 mod represents like 40% more damage. 198 spell damage is a whole lot. The mana regen is nice too. Now, there are other options for the Cane. Instead of double damage, you could go crit multi. It's worse, but you could do it. Instead of spell damage, mana regen as your hybrid roll, it could be spell damage and non-chaos as chaos. It could be chaos damage. As long as that big increase is there, then you're good to go. The mana regen is ideal because you do need some mana regen in the build. Not a lot, but you need some. Going more through our items, we're using 4 curses, and we happen to have 4 power charges, so we are using Anathema. It also fixes our power charge generation, which is great, because we don't have enough power charges that power charge on crit is really appealing to us. And instead, we can just cast curses. Wow, this one's actually taking a while. Okay, yeah, there we go. So as you go through a map, right, you're just going to cast curses, and eventually you're gonna just sustain your 4 very easy there. You're going to see, like, it's not gonna dip on a single target at all below those 4. It's just going to keep staying up on your 4 charges. Because it gives you a power charge when you cast a curse spell, 16% chance. So 1 in, oh no, I shouldn't do math like this. 1 in 6? Yeah, 1 in 6. 1 in 6 times you cast. Nice. And we cast about 3 times a second. So every 2 seconds or so, you should get a power charge, which is great. We have gloves. Now, this is a big deviation from what a lot of people are doing, so I'll talk about this. I'm not using Vixen's Entrapment. Vixen's, when you cast and you get curse replacement from Vixen's, you're only going to get 2 explosions, even if you have 3 overlaps. Even if all 3 of your spell cascade AoEs overlap, Vixen's will only give you 2 explosions, unlike Cursed Ground Support, which gives you 3 explosions. So you can kind of think of Cursed Ground Support as a 50% more multiplier. Now the exception there is that if you would be hitting the cap on your cooldown for Impending Doom, then it doesn't matter if you go from 2 to 3 because you're hitting your cap. However, with 40% CDR, which again we're getting from our Ascendancy, with 40% CDR, you would need 133% cast speed in order to actually keep up with... shoot, what was that? In order to keep up with... Wait, where was I going? Oh, you need 133% cast speed to hit your cap on your cooldown recovery using Vixen's, which is a lot of cast speed. You're probably not getting that much cast speed. And so, in that sense, Cursed Ground is actually just a more multiplier. Now, if you are playing this as a different build, like a Scion, I think a Scion version could be very strong, or if you're not in the Legacy of Phrecia event and you only have the regular Ascendancy classes accessible to you, then I would go Vixen's 100% of the time. Because you're not going to have this much cooldown recovery rate, you're not going to get anywhere close to it, really. Then you only need like 50% cast speed to hit the 2 overlap cap. I would go Vixen's for sure if you don't have 40% cast speed built into your build. Or, I'm sorry, 40% cooldown recovery rate. Now, another note about Vixen's is that even this build will transition into a Vixen's, even with my 3 casts per second. Because when you get Awakened Spell Cascade, then Vixen's can have 3 explosions at once. And so then it would be a huge DPS increase. Because then I could remove Cursed Ground Support and actually put in a real support, which is like 35% more damage or so. So, I'm using these gloves. They're giving me some res, some life, mana, ES, all stats that I want. They're nothing spectacular. You can see I don't really use the Val Strike skill. I'm poor. I don't have a lot going on in my stash right now. I got like 3 div. So I'm still working on rolling my Eldritch Implicits, but the important one here is Chaos Damage Leeched as Life. You really, really want a source of Life Leech in this build. So you can get Spell Leech on the tree very, very easily, and then you can get 10% of all Leech is instant, and because we're splitting our damage between Life and ES, you really want to be leeching both pools. Now, one way to do it is with a Glove Implicit, but if you're wearing a Vixen's, you're not going to be able to do that. You can get a Delve Ring with Chaos Damage Leeched as Life, and those aren't crazy. I had one that was like a div, and it was pretty good. It was like fine. I can't remember, but it had life and like 50 res and some of that. Yeah, it was fine. But another option is, I had talked before about putting in if you're in a different league, you would go a Doriani's Corrupted Soul, a Glorious Vanity Corrupted Soul here instead of Mind Over Matter. You'd replace this. And then one of these notables could turn into Chaos Damage Leeched as Life. And that would solve it pretty easily, because then you're already using your jewel for your keystone, and then you can get the Chaos Damage and Chaos Damage Leeched as Life. And that would be a really elegant way of solving that. Not something I necessarily would rely on as a league starter, though, I mean, the Doriani part for sure, but in order to get a Chaos Damage Leech, it might be easier to go with a Delve Ring. I'm not sure. Other items to walk through. This is just a just a belt with life and res. Our jewel is just life, strength, dex, res. I wonder if I do need that strength or dex. One of those is necessary. So this little jewel is doing a lot for me. The resistances are also necessary, of course. Yeah, again, if my gear was just a little bit better. So boots are life and res. You're seeing the theme. I have right now an implicit for drops brittle ground while moving. This is not good. I would prefer action speed. This technically sometimes does something, but it's only when you're moving. So you can see when I move, we get the little brittle ground, but it has a very short duration. So if I'm standing on top of a boss in casting, and if I'm moving with Frostblink, you're never going to get that brittle ground to drop. So it's actually not doing anything almost all the time. I just ran out of currency while trying to roll for action speed. Otherwise, ring with a bunch of Chaos Res. Love that much Chaos Res. Again, I think I went over this, but we're sitting at 37... Where are we? 37% Chaos Res. Amulet is a lot of stats. Strength, Dex, and then just life. And that little bit of cast speed is there because that helps me hit the cap. I could alternatively grab this 10% cast speed node because curses have these awesome nodes. You can get 20% cast speed here. That is really, really, really great. You usually don't get that much cast speed in a single point. Curse nodes in general are quite potent. You look at Skittering Runes, and it's 50 AoE and 20% reduced cost. Very, very strong. So that is one thing that Impending Doom has going for. It's just I guess it's the reason it can work is because you get the potency of your little passive skills. Otherwise, I have Anointed on it, Whirling Barrier, just for some more block and spell block. I just hit 94. I like to not die. You can die and get to 94 or 95. I'd like to hit to 95 too. It probably could be damage. There's a lot of options for damage. There's a lot of crit nodes I don't have. There's some chaos nodes I don't have. So there's a lot of options for damage, right? I bet Arcane Potency would be pretty good. I think Throat Seeker would be good. I don't know, even Assassination, right? There's a lot of nodes that you can take for damage. POB will tell you what to do if you want damage. I've invested a lot into AoE just to make it comfortable, but you don't necessarily need to. As long as your POB, here I'm going to move over to my POB. As long as your POB says that your AoE radius on your Despair, sorry, my cursor doesn't show up here. I'm not a streamer. I don't know how this works. But as long as your AoE radius on your curse says 4.8 meters, you will get 3 overlaps. Now mine's 5.6, which is a little bit of overkill, but that's because I've invested in so much AoE just to make sure that my actual Doom Blast itself has a good radius, because that's going to actually improve my clear. But again, as long as your curse is a 4.8 meter radius, you're going to hit all 3 overlaps in the center. Now, if you cannot do this, because say you're league starting, right? This is one reason I think it's a very weak league starter, is that initially your Despair doesn't say plus 1 meter to radius. It's going to gain levels and say plus 0.2, plus 0.3. You're going to have Spell Cascade, which won't say 16% less AoE. It'll say 25% less AoE. Your Cursed Ground Support, which has quality on it, which increases AoE, will not have AoE on it. So you're going to need more and more AoE to start. So you're not ever going to start with plus 3 overlaps. Even with my Ascendancy giving me 100% AoE, I didn't start with overlaps at level 31 when I put on Impending Doom. But what you can do here, let me put on my little Armageddon brand laser pointer here. So this is what it looks like with the overlaps, right? Is that it's if you cast on top of the Impending Doom or on top of the target, they're hitting all 3 areas. We've got this one area here, right? Then we had one to the right, one to the left. What you can do instead is you just move your cursor a little bit, and it's very trivial to get them into 2. It's very, very easy to get people into 2, especially when your AoE is this large. You can see if I reduce my AoE a little bit with a hex or a concentrated effect. You can see that right now this actually brings me to 4.7 AoE, and I'm not getting my triple overlap on the target. And it doesn't just mean that you go from 2 overlaps to 3 when you get the AoE. It actually makes it so when you target an enemy, you go from 1 explosion to 3 explosions. Because in the center, they're only getting hit by this first circle in the center there. You only get hit by 3 when the other 2 also overlap on top of each other. So it makes it a little bit frustrating, because for a lot of your life, if you don't have the AoE, you're going to be stuck on 2 explosions, and the way that you do that is you have to move the cursor off-center. Like, you might be best off just, like, actually placing the cursor underneath yourself in order to get the 2 overlaps that you need. It feels... I can tell you, I've played Impending Doom before on 2 overlaps, and it feels so much better going on 3. If you can make it so that when you name lock a target, they get hit by all 3, oh man, the quality of life there. And the actual real DPS you see is better too, because as bosses move, name lock will keep locked onto them, and Maven will teleport, and even though she teleports somewhere, you're going to keep hitting her with 3 AoEs. Otherwise, like, if you don't have that AoE, then you're going to have to finick around with your mouse again to get the 2 overlaps. It's pretty annoying, and you actually do lose real DPS in a lot of situations. That being said, just overall summary, the build... Oh wait, let me just go over, I guess, one more piece of gear. I'm sorry. This Balance of Terror, it was 2 Divines. I think you can probably get it for like 3 right now. It's the most expensive piece of the build by far, and it's really important, I think. Inflict Withered for 2 seconds on hit if you've cast Despair in the past 10 seconds. This is the easiest way to apply Wither. We are casting Despair as our main source of damage, so we are withering on every hit. We have full uptime on 15% Wither stacks. Yeah, this I think is a huge quality of life game changer, because otherwise you can put Wither Totems up, but everyone knows those are kind of trash, kind of fake. And you can use Withering Step, but then you can't Frost Blink, because they share the same cooldown. You could do Flame Dash, but Flame Dash is an instant, so it's a little... You can't really spam it as well. So yeah, I think that this Balance of Terror is super important. It's possible that there are like Timeless Jewels that do it. I can't recall if there are other easy sources of Wither. You could go if you were an occultist, you could grab just Withering Presence, and that, like, you start with 1 Withering Step, and that's all you need, and then Withering Presence will kind of keep it stacked up to 15. Like, that to me is good enough. I think that's fine. But yeah. So I just wanted to point out that Balance of Terror. Otherwise, do we even have another jewel? I don't think we do. We're that point starved over here. We did hit level 94. We took out our Eater and Exarch, which aren't really much to write home about. We also took down a Maven, but it's very slow. And again, what we're running into is the issue that when you cast Impending Doom, you don't get to decide where all the explosions go. So when it's just Maven, the damage is fine. I did it on a 5-link. It's slow. I was at like 1.7 million DPS at the time. So like, it's just not very much, which is fine. It's not like I was dying to everything or anything. I was just able to stand around and do the fight. But during the brain phases, oh gosh, it's so slow. Because you might have the brain spawns here, right? And then it spawns like 3 bosses, right? And so you try to hit the brain, but what happens is that your Impending Doom will start triggering on these other bosses that have spawned, and your damage on the brain might not happen for a cast, or you're only getting 1 explosion and the other explosions are happening over here. It's a slog for sure, and this can be a problem when you're also doing encounters like Legion. Because you can't target... Did I show off the Legion in this map? I think I did, yeah. You can't target specific people. It can be a problem in Blight, when there's like a Blight boss coming down the lane. Yeah, there's a lot of encounters that can make it kind of annoying. So, don't be fooled by big AoE. The actual AoE is the explosions that happen between... once you've removed the curse. And that AoE is not as magnificent. Otherwise, my flasks are nothing at all. Again, I'm poor. I'm stuck on adjacent flask when used rather than used when full. My POB is with... I guess I'll just show that again really quickly. My POB is a pretty reasonable config. Again, I'm using... Power Charges, which I have all the time. I've crit recently, which I have all the time. I've got Withered stacks. There's nothing else being ticked. I'm not taking Brittle Ground. Again, it's not real. The only other thing I think that's, or I guess also, I don't have Immortal Call ticked. It has about a 45% uptime, but I don't have it ticked. And that's kind of in combination with I do have a Flesh and Stone aura. And you can see that's this like this red line here that waves out. It's not very big. Oh wait, I need to come back to the game. I'm sorry. The Flesh and Stone is this red pulsing line. It's not very big. Now I tend to stand on top of my targets, but not always, right? But I figure between Flesh and Stone and my Immortal Call with like a 45% duration, I think I can call the Flesh and Stone up. Sometimes I'm going to be hit when I have both of these things affecting the enemy, or, you know, both of them active, I should say, I guess. And sometimes I'll be hit when I have neither, but a lot of the time I'll be hit when I have one of them up. So I think that's pretty real. And as well, like, your max hits don't account for the fact that you have a Temporal Chains aura. This aura, as I showed, is pretty much the whole screen. It probably goes about this wide out. And that is, it's like a full curse. My curse effect is 95%, even when including Blasphemy's 25% less curse effectiveness. So it is truly a full temp chains, which helps. It helps a lot for sure. Yeah, 18% less action speed. That's handy. And against in maps, a lot of times what you're worried about is, you know, the mobs that are spawning when you've got all sorts of juiced altars affecting them, that kind of thing. But overall, I mean, the build works, and it is fun, and I like it, and it's simple. It's one button and a movement skill. You don't have anything else you have to keep up. But that's kind of what it has going for it. Its damage isn't remarkable. Its tankiness isn't remarkable. It's fine. But gosh, as a League starter, man, it's hard to recommend. You're not going to have the AoE in the beginning. If you're not, especially if you're not the Harbinger class. Now, you can grab a bunch of AoE even when you're not the Harbinger. You can get... this is a whole bunch of AoE here that you can grab. You can grab some here as well. You don't really need a ton. I'm way, way, way past the point of the 4.8 meters that I need. But, yeah. If you really like curses, go for it. But hard to recommend otherwise. Anyway, thanks for watching.